Okay, good. Okay, here we go. Please come on. Yes, thank you for doing that because I think that that's the right thing. Okay, good. I shouldn't have pushed mine yet. Okay, there we go. That's good to know. Okay. Can y'all see me on there? Okay, great. Just be on this video. It's not my thing. I don't really love video, but it's to allow more people to be able to be with us who couldn't be with us in person. Okay. Hi, friends. How's everyone doing? Great. How's everyone feeling? Just so you know, there are chairs up here. Those of you in the back, I feel like you're very far away, so come closer if you'd like. My name is Yaffa Epstein. I'm here from the Pardes Institute of Jewish Studies in Jerusalem. Pardes is a non-denominational co-ed Jewish learning program whose goal is to open the doors of classic Jewish texts as wide as possible to allow any Jew who wants to come in and learn. We have many, many different programs. There's some information here on your tables. I'm also going to be passing out a sign-in sheet for people who want to know more about Pardes.
And on Thursday night, you will be teaching at Anshe Shalom with the Rebbetzin there about Chavruta.
Correct. That is true. We'll just do a shameless plug for more Torah in Chicago. Yes, me and my longtime chavruta of 15 years, Rabbi Sarah Wachenfeld, who was my chavruta at Pardes. We're going to be co-teaching a session on chavruta
For Limud.
Right, for Limud Chicago at Anshe Shalom. That is this Thursday night. Happy to tell you more about that. Okay, so, but what we're talking about today, what our topic is, I just closed the door. I think we should just do. Okay, so our topic for today is called On the Road Again, Travel as Transformation of the Talmud. And the reason why I like to teach about this story and this topic in general is because I'm the Director of Education in North America for Pardes, and my role is predominantly to travel. I'm on the road, 100 days a year, which is a lot of days. Any fellow road warriors out there? Okay, so you know what this life is like. It's a hard life. And what's interesting and something that I've been thinking about a lot is what does it mean to travel? What does it mean to be on the road? What does it mean to take your home with you as you travel? I think that it's a very sort of interesting question. But even more interesting is that many, many, many of the important stories or theological moments that happen in the Talmud happened when people were on the road. So-and-so and so-and-so, Rabbi so-and-so and Rabbi so-and-so, when they were walking on the way. Right? Very important moments, some critically important moments in the Talmud. Teacher-student relationships, transformational moments, important revelatory moments happen for the rabbis while they're on the way. Then I started thinking, not just the Talmud, but in fact, so many moments of Jewish history, right? I don't know, Lech Lecha, for example, right? Really important moments, transformational moments of the Jewish people happen when we're on the road. You could say, walking out of Egypt, that's a really important moment, right? Walking through the desert, coming into the land of Israel, conquering the land of Israel, like very important moments, critically important moments. So what does it mean that we're sort of a people on the move? And that's something that I've been really thinking about a tremendous amount, as I am constantly on an airplane. And trains and planes and automobiles, for those of you who are going to get that reference, because you're old like me. Okay, so, and the young people are not going to get that. Okay, but I love to start this, before I teach this text, I always love to teach this piece of Gloria Steinem. Because, and one day I feel like, one day Gloria Steinem and I will like correspond, and I'll write her a letter and be like, whenever I teach this piece of Talmud, I teach you Torah first. But Gloria Steinem wrote a book in honor of her 70th birthday called My Life on the Road. And she is someone also who is a road warrior. And it's a very fascinating, it's really a great book. Very interesting. And it's all about this question of what does it mean to be on the road and what does it mean to influence people and to be sort of a cross-fertilizer, pollinizer of ideas and movements and how does the road open us up to new experiences. And she starts out with this piece. I actually would like to, I know we're recording this way, but I'd like to ask someone in the room if they would be willing to read this first piece. It's in English, not scary. Okay, great.
Gloria Steinem, My Life on the Road. Before she leaves, my new friend...
Oh, wait, I'm so sorry. I did a bad thing. Okay, so I have to explain to you the context of the story, which is also really important. So let me just tell you the background before I get to before she leaves, okay? So stay with me for 1 second. Stay up here with me, or else you won't understand what's happening. So Gloria Steinem explains... I realize I've never taught this live, so I'm like very afraid that one day Gloria Steinem's going to see this and be like, that's not what I said. Anyways, halavai, that should happen. But in any event, halavai. But she was not going to ever say that to me, but Gloria Steinem might say that to me. But anyway, she explains how she was on the road and she was going to South Dakota. And some of you may know that in South Dakota every year there is a Hell's Angels convention. Do people know about this? It's a really interesting thing. Personally, when I was a kid, we drove from Rochester, New York to Vancouver, and it happened to be during those 2 weeks of August, and it happened to be that the Hells Angels conference was happening, and so I've experienced this personally, which is also part of why I feel so close to it. And she talks about how afraid she was, and how like everywhere was booked up with these bikers, right, and how afraid she was, and how she was just afraid they would find out who she was, and that she would encounter some negativity. And she describes how she's sitting in a diner one day, and this woman walks up to her with her husband, and she was very nervous, like, oh God, what's gonna happen? And they're like, oh my God, are you Gloria Steinem? And she's like, yes, and they're like, oh, we love Ms. Magazine, and they're like gushing about how amazing she is, which is like really not what she was expecting from this biker couple. Okay, that's the context of this. That's the context of this story. Okay, so yeah, go ahead.
Before she leaves, my new friend tells me to look out of the big picture window at the parking lot. See that purple Harley out there, that big gorgeous one? That's mine. I used to ride behind my husband and never took the road on my own. Then after the kids were grown, I put my foot down. It was hard, but we finally got to be partners. Now, he says he likes it better this way. He doesn't have to worry about his bike breaking down or getting a heart attack and totaling us both. I even put Ms. on my license plate, and you should see my grandkids' faces when Grandma rides up on her purple Harley.
Isn't that amazing? Have you ever had anything more amazing in your whole life? I love that piece, right? And I have my own motorcycle, and it's purple, and it's Ms. on the license plate, and my grandchildren, like there's a Masorah here, I'm going to teach my children about it, grandchildren. Beautiful Torah. Okay, good. Keep going.
On my own again, I look out at the barren sand and tortured rocks of the Badlands, stretching for miles. I've walked there, and I know that close up, the barren sand reveals layers of pale rose and beige and cream, and the rocks turn out to have intricate womb-like openings. Even in the distant cliffs, caves of rescue appear. What seems to be one thing from a distance is a very different close up. I tell you the story because it's the kind of lesson that can be learned only on the road, and also because I've come to believe that inside each of us has a purple motorcycle. We have only to discover it and ride.
Okay, beautiful. Right, so we actually could spend, I would say, all of our time together, the next 30 minutes, just unpacking this piece. But that's not what we're here to do. We're here to unpack a piece of Gemara. But just a few sentences. Why does she say this thing about, I tell you this story because it's the kind of lesson that can be learned only on the road. Why? Why does she think that?
Shifting point of view.
Say more.
Well, because,
and also just tell us your
because
first name.
what it is, I'm Kathy. Yeah. Just thinking out loud, because I do that, so it might not go anywhere. Because on the road, what you're doing is moving, and what moving does is it changes your point of view.
Beautiful.
As she demonstrates in her little story about the barren sand versus the gradations of color and the
beautiful
caves.
Beautiful. So shifting perspective. By definition, when I'm on the road, I have a different perspective. Because I'm in movement, I'm in motion. Great. Why else? Yeah. And just tell me your name.
My name is Misha. Because very much when one's moving, their surroundings are different, and you're outside your comfort zone. You have to reevaluate your surroundings.
Great. Right. I'm outside my comfort zone. I have to reevaluate. And the question is, does that cause me to be more open or less open?
More.
Okay, more. That's not why. I'm going to go with both in a second. So why more?
Again, back to the shifting perspectives that, you've always seen one thing a certain way, and all of a sudden you're open to new angles and new depths and new colors and new...
Great. So I'm out of my comfort zone, so I have the capacity to see newness, but both...
Because you're afraid. dangers and their risks, and you have to take more care than you do when you're home.
Beautiful, right? I don't know everything, and so when I don't know things, I have a tendency to be like, my walls are up, I'm much more vulnerable, and so sometimes when I'm vulnerable, I'm open to new perspectives, and sometimes when I'm vulnerable, I shut down, right? And I'll just tell you this, for me, all the time this happens, where I'm on the road, it's late at night, I don't know where I'm going, and I walk with purpose, right? I have no idea where I'm going, team, right? I could be walking, but I walk with purpose, because that makes me feel safe, right? It makes me feel like I don't know where I am, I'm dark, it could be dangerous, it could not be dangerous, right? But I don't know, because I don't know, because it's the unknown, I actually shut down, and I'm more careful, or more afraid of newness, right? But sometimes, no, it actually opens me up to new perspectives. And she talks a little bit about this, right? That even distant cliffs, like caves of rescue appear, this idea of like, what I thought was shelter is actually dangerous, or what I thought was danger is actually shelter, right? And that's a very interesting question about sort of the shifting nature of my perspective on the road. But Misha, you want to say something else?
Oh yeah. So I guess I work with students that study abroad, and there's a concept in the study abroad world called the House of Mirrors. So when students go abroad, they develop intercultural competence, which is outward, but also they turn inward in their own beliefs and values.
Beautiful.
So that's what I'm curious about, whether the shutting down versus opening up concept.
Yeah, right, and they're both happening, right? Sometimes, right? And also, what are the ingredients I need in order to open up? What if I had a friend with me on the road? Does that change things? Right? What if I'm with a whole group? What if I'm leading a group? How does that change my competency, or my at least facade of competency, right? Which is also really interesting and important, right? Am I responsible for a group of people? So that's another whole perspective here. Okay, great. So my friends, everything we do at Pardes has a chavruta, and we're going to do that here. I know we have a short amount of time, but still, you could always do at least 10 minutes of chavruta. You just always can. It's possible. So you're going to turn to the person next to you, and you're going to read source number 1. I don't want you to get stuck there. I want you to spend 3 minutes on source number 1. I'm going to tell you how long to spend on each source. Just read source number 1 so you understand the context of source number 2. Okay? Source number 1 quickly, and then source number 2 for 7 minutes. So turn to the person next to you. One person reads the text out loud. There are questions on the bottom to discuss, and then we'll come back together. Okay? So just, even total strangers, we're going to just introduce ourselves. Hello, nice to meet you. Let's do it. Okay, great.
I love it.
How do they, we thought about doing how do they make extensions?
If you want to sign in, no pressure, but if you'd like to.
The purpose of defining the Shabbat limits.
And maybe later.
If one house receives and another projects, or if one turret or the wall receives and another projects, if there were wounds, 10 and breadth high, or bridges, or suppose a monument that contains dwelling places, they extend the boundaries of the town is to include them. And they make it the Shabbat limits like a square tablet in order that the use of the corners might be gained.
Not literally. Uzasharim and
So
bridges
section
and
1,
fashot
section 1,
yesh
at the end of the city, there is a row of houses, but the row is not set up evenly. The Shabbat limit is measured from the
but
house
it
that
says
projects the most enough from the house that
also monuments, graves, above ground graves.
So the
That
outer
have like a residence.
Right, or the level you want to extend it as far as you
Section
can.
2, if there's a part of the wall, such as a turret or tower used to build the city, which projects further than other parts, the Shabbat limit is measured from the further
measured what's going to be the Shabbat limit.
Yep.
And they make
If there are ruins
like
outside the parts of the
Okay.
city,
Again,
or bridges or
extend
structures made over graves,
everybody,
then all
right.
of these are also charted in the
Yes,
city.
yes.
So it's not just the city, but it's also
Kadesh Yehi Mishpar Esaviyot. So
and then when they come to the Shabbat limit, the first thing they do is make the city into a rectangle, with the furthest structure on each side being the city limits. Even if the city is circular, they draw a rectangle around it, so that people can get to travel at the corners. The 2,000 feet are now measured in a square around. This square so that people can gain benefit of the corners. So it's again, it's about extending the outermost limit to give people the space.
Dr. Joshua, so that people begin part, yeah.
So
Section
here's
one is
the
at the end of the
city
city,
and
was
then
where
right
houses,
here.
but where was not set. Even the Shabbat limit was measured from the house that projects
That's
the most,
industrial
and not from the house that recedes. So I guess the larger
People can walk
area.
around.
If there's a part of the wall, such as a turret or tower used to guard the city, which projects further than the other parts, Shabbat limit is measured from the same projection, again to increase the total Shabbat limit. If there are ruins outside parts of the city, bridges or structures made over graves, then all of these are also
Right,
included in the
right.
city. So this is interesting, because I know that the graveyards and things were actually included in the project.
So, but you have an
That's
area,
something I would think about doing.
each one,
Rooms outside the city.
the area.
That's what also
This is just saying that when you build that, when you
to
put that in,
watch.
you put the string around, or is it just defined that the city is?
When they come to set the Shabbat limit, the first thing they do is make the city into a rectangle with the furthest
Right,
structure
okay,
each side
okay.
of the
So
city
you would
limits.
define the
They make
area
the
where
city
you could,
circular,
where
they
you
draw
could
a rectangle
rectangle
around it,
Shabbat,
so that people
and
get
what
some
was
extra
included as a
place to
quadrant.
travel at the corners. And 2,000 cubits are now measured in a square around this
It was once understood and there was
so people get the benefit of the corners.
Okay.
So you got the circle, you got the rectangle,
It's not this
and then you make a square
Oh, I
around
replied,
that,
this is
so
a
increases, that would increase
I was like,
these two
so
sides
sure
of the
the
coordinate, I guess.
Right, it's
Sure,
very
towards
important.
the trodden it down.
Right, and then verse 2, so Talmud Bavli, Amar Yeshua ben Hanania, Mi Amar, Lo Yisraeli Adam, Chutz Me'isha, nobody's ever beat me and argued with my next, except for a woman, a baby, and a baby ass. Isha Mai, Hamachat Mida Arachti, Etzat Achanya, Hat, I was in again, to have a place, Skali, Holy,
Right, okay, got it.
Thirdly, they say to be Yom Rishon Lachalti, I ate the first day. Lo shiarti mehem klu, but I left nothing. Shnia, the second day. Velo shiarti mehem klu. She served me the same thing with the second, and I left nothing of them. Yom Shlishi, Hakti Chatan b'melach, on the third day.
So what was the incident with the little girl?
And I tasted it and didn't like it. I'm Rabbi, Mitnema and Chasalei, Amati, Amati, we will all just as I ate earlier. Amati, Ayalachadi, Shoked after Minapat.
In the other story,
You should have pulled back from the
They
bread.
usually, right.
so in the
Amati Rabbi, Shamalo Hinata Pe'ah,
I think that in the first story, we should not have the
you didn't
chief
leave
giving
anything
it out for why
You left the dish today.
I don't understand
rather than
some
like
of
say
that.
to him,
Yeah.
and he left there one, I'm not eating it. She's kind of creating a framework that gives him an out.
Maybe that's why you did it.
Isn't it that this
Shamalo
way
Hinata
you're
Pe'ah,
really
usually
just
the first day
compensation
left
for
nothing.
the other ones that you're
Maybe
eating,
that's
so
the
like,
local
paying your back.
didn't I say
I don't
this?
understand
And
that.
the
That's just
Shayim
that's
say,
something
something
you
you
put on your personal
You
plate.
don't
That lesson.
extend the
But I think, yeah, I agree that there's just getting more
diagonal
over,
Well, here in the serving pot,
so
nothing
it
must be
doesn't have
left
to
in the
have
serving
that.
pot.
They
Don't leave anything in the pot, but leave some on your plate.
but it's Pe'ah, not Pas.
It's
Not
strange.
Shayim Pe'ah, V'Ke'ara.
I mean, if I were the purpose, I'd rather take it from the pot than from somebody's plate.
Right, but it's also changing pot to Pe'ah. In Shayim Pe'ah, don't leave anything in the pot, but you should leave something in the plate.
Questions to
Because it's
consider.
politeness.
What is meant by rather should is best.
Yeah.
I think that might be.
Always is
I don't know,
best.
this are just, I mean, are they just talking about etiquette, or are they talking about laws of leaving things, so?
Well, it's, I think it's more etiquette than law. It doesn't sound like law.
I agree with that. Okay.
That's the story of food.
Tinoket mahi, hamakateit malek
Right.
derech,
And then she said what she said, bread, right. So that's how it's best.
Amali tinoket
What does the
echad,
story say
malek,
in
lo
common?
sadeh yizu, this is no field. Amarti la, lo derech kibushahi, but it's also not a paved, no, it's a trodden path. Amarti la,
Right.
lo derech kibusha, it is like, it is beaten down, it's trodden.
Right.
Amali, listing kamotacha,
Right,
So listing,
and the differences are
robbers
in the
like
first
you
story.
have trodden
You know,
down.
there's a question about honesty. The
He's saying that
second
because
one,
he's stealing it from the farm.
I don't know, there was
Well,
no
then, yeah, there's
intent.
a
The
half
second
there,
and third
exactly,
really
so
was
he's contributing
no
to it,
intention.
because somebody else did it, not him.
Right. Tinok Mahi, and the third incident, Hamachat Hayiti Malach
Well, first of all, they all,
Because
they
the
all have
rabbi
an outside of
percent
your
is
house.
part of the field, now I
Amarti, Ezavet Nerech Zir Amar Mi Zuk בקצרה וארוכה.
They're all not in his own private
הלכתי
domain.
בקצרה וארוכה, I went on the one that's first
Yeah.
written.
He should have realized
כיוון
that
שהגעתי,
this was
עיר
not,
מצאתי שמקיפין אותה
This is
גנות
something
this was
that,
not something that was right.
right, well, and maybe this is something that he affirmatively did, that was bad, and this one is something affirmatively that he didn't know.
Hedged in by gardens and orchards.
Because he wanted to tell.
And I turned back.
He didn't
אמרתי לו,
understand
"זמני
that
לא
he
אמרת
was
לי
gonna get
קצרה,
married.
אמרתי לו,
Okay, my
"לא
friends,
ארוכה."
2 more minutes, okay?
So what was the trick?
Finish up your last thoughts and we're gonna come back together.
And then I'm wondering the
Or
point
the
of
three
that
characters.
I don't really get that one so much.
I think this is about extending things close by the parks that are on.
Always be
But
honest
short and long
with your
versus long
host.
and short, I mean,
Right.
what's so wise?
Don't take shortcuts.
Learned 3 new
Right.
things.
And the
We
shortest
just
way may
barely
not be the
finished
shortest
reading
way.
it.
Correct, yeah.
So, or why is he?
Okay, my friends, let's come back together. Okay, so,
What is about this group about?
great, right? Great stories. Great. Let's unpack them a little bit together. So, first of all, whenever you look at a rabbinic story or stories, and this is a story, a set of 3 stories, but of the same teacher teaching us them, you want to understand both its halachic legal context and its literary context. And in this particular case, just so we understand, this is found in Tractate Eruvin, and this is a story in the midst of several pages. It's actually a really interesting sort of folio about how we teach Torah. That's actually the context here, is about how we teach Torah. And fascinatingly, that begins immediately after this Mishnah. Okay, and this Mishnah in Eruvin is about how we draw the boundaries of a city, right, for the purpose of Tchum Shabbat, right, this idea that you're not allowed to go outside of a city more, right, 2,000 amot outside of, or 200 amot outside of the Tchum, the boundaries of the city, okay? And why that matters to us is we're trying to figure out in a city that's not like, let's just say, for example, Manhattan, where it's a grid, right? Where it's a clear grid where the boundaries of the city are because they're watered, right? In this particular case, cities are not built in squares, right? There's a piece that's sticking out this way. I have no idea. Tell me about what Evanston looks like. Give me an example. Or Chicago. Help me out here. I
There's
literally
cities
have no idea.
around it. So the one difference is here that there's not farms and fields outside our city, but there's more city, other city.
More city, other city, right? And well, that's actually a great example because that's basically what they're describing here as well. Suddenly someone built a house, and now do I include that in my city or don't I include that in my city? I went outside of the neighborhood and I built another house or my own estate. Do I include that? Right? And how do I make do the boundaries start from inside? Or what am I saying here? What's the question that the Mishnah is asking when I talk about I basically make a straight line, right, in order to make a square, in order to make a circle, so that I can do what? What am I trying to do? What? Extend. Right? I want you to notice that. Actually, this Mishnah is clearly an example of extension. It could have gone the other way, which is start from the innermost point, and then don't go, especially the one I'm trying to say is, don't leave your house on Shabbat. Stay put, stay present. It's fascinating to notice that the first Mishnah describing how I make those boundaries is actually what? Extending, right? Expansive rather than, right, limiting. Which is, I think, quite fascinating. Why would I want to do that, my friends? Why would I want to say, okay, walk even further out of town? Why?
Want to be inclusive with the community?
Beautiful. What? Tell me your name.
Michael.
Michael, tell me why this makes you more inclusive.
Because you can travel within that area, and you're not violating the Shabbat.
Good. So why does that include? Who does that include?
What do you mean include?
Who does it? Because you said it makes it more inclusive.
For all the Jews within the community, you make sure that everybody can be part
Great.
of a community.
Which people?
The Jews?
Where?
The
ones who
outermost.
built
The
it.
Good.
outermost,
Yeah,
the outermost.
fair.
Okay.
The ones on the outskirts
Got it.
of my city now
Yeah.
actually are part of my city. That's what I just done, right? And which means if I live in the middle of the city, I don't have to worry. I can still walk all the way out to my cousins who live out in the other neighborhood, right? All the way down there. And then we can still take a nice Shabbos walk together, right? I don't have to worry about that. It's a very interesting moment, especially if we consider who is on the outskirts of my city classically. Who lives on the outskirts of town?
The poor.
Yaffa. right? Those who are not like me, they're not, the wealthier you are, the closer you live to town, right? The poorer you are, the more you live on the outskirts of the city, which they mention people who are literally living in graveyards, or which are on the outskirts of the city. That's interesting, right? That I want to think about those people who are on the outside, the boundaries, the borders of my community. I think it's not for nothing that the people that Yeshua and Hananiah meets and encounters are those who are not typically found where? Inside what?
The heart of the city.
Well, but probably have some young women and young. But you're saying why? Well, because they are innkeepers and she's on a path, and right. Physically, they're actually not in the city, most of them, right? Which is a great point. But also, these are all people who, if I'm Rabbi Yeshua and Hananiah, and my world is what? The Beit Midrash, right? Then these are people who are not typically found on the inside. So it's interesting to notice that there's, I think, a very interesting analogy that the Talmud is making here between, right, the city and those on the outskirts, and now the Beit Midrash and those who are usually not found inside it. Okay, especially because this is the case, my friend. Moving on to source number 2. This is the case. Rabbi Yeshua ben Hananiah walks into the Beit Midrash one day. Okay, that's what this means, right? Right. Oh, sorry, it's not said explicitly here, but basically, right, that he walks into the Beit Midrash one day and he makes this grand old statement, which is,
Nobody's ever beat me in argument.
no one has ever beaten me. I am the
King of the hill.
King of the hill, great, or like the fairest of them all, but in the Beit Midrash kind of way, right? Like, I'm the smartest of them all. Except for whom?
A woman and a little boy.
A woman, a little girl, and a little boy, right? Exactly. Which, this line in English is so beautiful, right? No man has ever bested me except for a woman. It's a great line, right? It's a big question. The Hebrew here, obviously, is Adam. Does he mean human being? Maybe. Could say it's human, and then, but still, it's pretty good. Who is he talking to? No one's ever bested me.
The other people in the Beit Midrash.
Yeah, you all. Hey, Beit Midrash, none of you have ever bested me. Who else hasn't bested me? So not my students, who else?
My teachers.
Not my teachers, not my fellows, okay? What do we think about Rabbi Yeshua ben Hananiah at this point? What would you say about him?
Arrogant.
Arrogance, good. There's a lot of arrogance there. On the other hand,
Well, he's coming to reprove the arrogance of the Beit Midrash somewhat by saying that he's only been bested by people who are considered beneath.
Beautiful, right? The danger of this room is that the people who are in here, right, have a tendency, have a proclivity, there's a danger that perhaps we're going to come to a place of arrogance, right? But there's also in this statement, no one has ever bested me except for people who have bested me, also some level of humility, right? Can you imagine saying to your students, listen, you all have never bested me, but actually a little girl once told me off, and it was the greatest right? The greatest tochacha rebuke of my life, right? Can you imagine saying that? A Rosh Hashiva getting up and saying that to the, right? It's a crazy thing to say, and it takes a lot of humility to be able to admit that. On the other hand, I'm not really sure about the humility of saying, but no, the rest of you have never beaten me, right? Now, what's interesting and important to note is that the word choice here by the Gemara is actually really important, right? In the Hebrew, it's bested in English, which is not great, but in the Hebrew here, it's actually nitzchuni adam. Now, that should be like sort of ringing in our ears a little bit, nitzchuni. Great, right? What do we say, nitzchuni what usually? Banai, right? Nitzchuni banai. My children have overcome me, which, by the way, is a later rabbinic, right, Gemara gloss on a Tanaitic story, which we can talk about what that means at length. I only am running quickly out of time, only 15 minutes left. But it is interesting to notice that's the only 2 places that it appears in the Bavli, which is very interesting. So you could say, okay, so what? So what? Some scholars would say, so what? It doesn't mean anything. This is written, this is an Eruvin, that's there, you don't mix Gemaras, da-da-da. Okay, great. But I'm not sure. I think that there's got to be a conversation here. Specifically also because the person who does do the winning over there with Tedros Achnai is whom? Rabbi Yeshua. Right? Versus Rabbi Eliezer. Yep. So that is interesting, my friends. Right? That who the rabbis have as being nitzchuni of God, in fact, is Rabbi Yeshua. Right? Yeah.
Which is to say, one of the people who's never bested him is God.
Yes, sir. Okay, that you said it, not me, because we're being recorded. But I think that's a great point. Okay, but that's a great point, right? Is there even a wink, wink, nudge, nudge of like, yeah, and Yeshua, who else hasn't bested him? Even he bested Hashem. This man is. But guess what that means, right? I know we're being recorded, but that means that who did best Hashem? And theory, right? A woman, a little girl, a little boy. But no, God forbid, I would never say that in public. But right, but the something interesting about this piece, if we're going to compare these characters, okay, so that's these stories. So that's fascinating to sort of put on the table here. Rabbi Shimon Hanaya really is someone who is seen as the champion of the Midrash, and yet he has this humility to walk into his Beit Midrash and say to his students and his colleagues, no, wait, actually I was bested by these people. Now let's look at these stories. What's the story? Says the Gemara, what's the case? Pam achat, nidarachti etzel achsaniya achat, right? I was a guest of a certain innkeeper who was a woman, right? And she made me beans. On the first day, I ate them all. Didn't leave anything over. It's a little Goldilocks-ish. I don't know if anyone else felt that way, but I always feel like I always think of Goldilocks and the Three Bears when I read this part. This one was too hot. This one, right? But actually, right, he eats the first day, he eats it all. The second day, he eats it all, right? Third day?
She didn't season it well, so he didn't eat it.
Okay, is that true?
She oversees
She overseasoned with
What does
salt.
that mean, she overseasons it with salt? How did you understand this, my friend?
She didn't want him to eat it.
She didn't want him to eat it. Why?
to teach him the lesson she's going to
Because
teach
she
him.
didn't leave a little left on his plate.
Okay, good, right? So she's trying to teach you. So therefore, how do you guys think that this was actually a conscious act on her part?
The seasoning?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How many of you think that she actually poured the whole thing of salt into the pot? Raise your hands.
Whole thing.
I'm saying whatever. Put too much salt, right?
Way too much.
Because over seasoning it can mean accidentally she just put too much salt in, right? But we all think that it means.
Well, no, because he refused to eat any of it. So, right, so a lot. So in a blatant way, too salt. too
Good.
much
This food is inedible, right? You know that is because he
Doesn't eat it.
literally right, does not eat it, right? And in fact, right, I withdrew my hand from them. It says right, mashachti yadai mehen. I pulled my hand away. Okay. Amrali, she says, "Oh, Rebbe, that's so interesting. How come you're not eating? You don't like my food today?" She says, right? He replies, "Oh no, it's okay. I already ate breakfast. I'm good. I had big breakfast, big Israeli breakfast. It was great. Everything's fine, right? Right?" And then she said, "Oh, really? That's so interesting because you ate
Bread.
You ate all the bread. You must be hungry." Right? He could have responded, "Yeah, I ate so much bread. I'm fine, I'm full." Right? But he didn't choose to say that. Then she says, "Rebbe, right? Is it possible that you did not leave over?" Now, again, this is my fault. I really want to apologize for the English here. It's all my translation, so I apologize. But right, you left the dish today as compensation for the former meals, right? Which actually, in the Hebrew here, the word that is used is pe'ah, which we know pe'ah is actually right the language of what?
The portion of your field that you leave.
The portion of the field that you leave over, i.e. a form of tzedakah, right? It's a form of charity, and she's basically saying to him,
Okay.
yeah, because you messed up on days 1 and 2, you must be leaving all the food in the pot for me to correct your mistake of days 1 and 2, right? Because after all, lo kach amru chachamim, don't the sages say, ein misharin pe'ah be'elfas, aval misharin pe'ah be'ka'ara. You don't leave over anything in the serving pot, rather, you leave it over on your individual plate. In other words, what we're talking about, just to clarify what's going on here, this actually describes the act of the innkeeper pouring the whole pot onto your plate, or to the number of plates that are at the table, and you, the guest, are supposed to leave. Don't eat it all. Okay, right? I put everything I have from the kitchen out, and you're supposed to know to leave some for me. And does he?
No.
Now, what do you think about that, my friends? What's shocking to you about this?
You would think he'd know the protocol.
Good. Why would you think that? Why would you think he would know the protocol?
Because he's part of society, he's a rabbi.
Beautiful. Good. Say more about he's a rabbi. Let's hear more about that.
No, you would think he would know what the proper protocol is.
Good. And specifically because she says,
The
don't
sages-
the sages say.
Yeah.
He should
Wouldn't he
know.
know? If it's
He should know what the
halacha,
sages
he
say.
should know the halacha. Right? By the way, it's not brought down the halacha anywhere. Later, Rambam codifies it, but it's interesting to notice that he does that as how you should behave. It's like a good behavior point. It's not brought down the halacha that you're not allowed to eat the whole food on your plate. Okay, you have to give tzedakah. It's a different, but it's an interesting thing to notice that it's not actually. So that's a very fascinating thing. When they say lo kach amru chachamim, does she mean is it really halacha or is it possibly the practice where
The polite practice.
the
of
polite
most
practice?
people.
Where though, my friends? Where is he? He's traveling. He is a guest at an inn. So it makes total sense that he might not know
Oh, I see, the protocol.
local custom.
Yeah.
Of course he doesn't know. That's not what they do in his town. In his town, they pay $5 at the end of the meal, right? And with a big tip, right? But not in this town. In this town, they let the food over, right? So, okay, so what did he do that was so wrong?
He didn't act the same way on the road as he did if he was at home.
Say more, Max.
He assumed that since he's on the road, maybe something's going to fly, or he's a little more loose with
Okay, good. Good.
how he normally acts.
Beautiful. So Max is reading this as, this is the custom in his place as well. But nobody knows who I am here. I'm not Yosef ben Hanania here. I'm just a normal person. And I'm going to be a little looser, right? I'm on the road. I'm not really my full best self. Yeah? Okay, great, good. And that's assuming that the customs are the same. Good. What else could happen? Yeah?
Okay, this is already the third day. You didn't think to ask what are the customs.
Beautiful. He didn't think to ask. I don't know about everyone else, but when you go to another country, and sometimes even another state, you ask what? What are the customs here? Do I tip? Don't I tip? What's the tipping percentage, right? I'll tell you, like for me, before you go to a country, you always ask. Right, for example, in Australia, you don't tip in restaurants. It's not done. There's no line to put anything. There's no tip jar. No tipping. And by the way, there's some Australian is going to correct me. That's totally fine. Tell me. But that was my experience. Okay, you don't tip at all. And it was shocking. I was like, well, how do I express my gratitude? So say thank you in person. Okay. But it's a very interesting thing, right? That different cultures have different customs, and maybe what this is saying is when you go stay as a guest in an inn, it is your responsibility to think about those people who are serving you. And I wonder how this woman is going to eat today. Right? It's actually and it might not be that I did anything wrong. I just needed to ask the question. Okay, that is very interesting. We notice that Rabbi Yeshua ben Hanani here. Right? Okay, so what's the incident with the little girl? I was once on a journey, right? And then, I love this one. This is like my favorite one. I was on a journey, right? V'hayta derech overet, right, b'sadeh. There was a path in a field. V'hayiti malech, and I walked on it. So far, it sounds fine. Amrali tinoket achad. A young girl says to me, Rebbe, lo sadeh hizu? Isn't this a field? Meaning, what is she saying to him? Isn't this
Planted,
private property? Now, when she says, isn't this private property, what is she actually saying to him?
It is private.
Yafeh. It is private property. She is the private property sign that is standing. I can imagine that her father sends her out there and be like, oh God, please go out there. I just planted a new field of beans and there's travelers. And just go stand out there and just say, please don't walk on this field. Please don't walk on this field. I can imagine. Otherwise, I'm not really sure what she's doing out there by herself in a field, but that's a whole other conversation, right? Really worth asking, actually. Right? And, right? Isn't this a field? Which is actually a polite way of saying, hey, Rabbi, you're messing up here, right? Like, this is actually private property. And what does he say to her? Nope. Wait, what? I just said to you, this is private property. What, you say back to me, no? Lo? Derech Kushay? No. It's actually walked upon, it's a trodden path. I don't understand. You are a...
Rabbi.
You're a rabbi. Good. What else? Yeah.
I just think it might be a little bit. He may see it as an easement. That in property law, in a lot of places there are places that the public can go through, and so the argument between him and the girl, as it were, is she says, "Can't you see this isn't really trodden regularly?"
Right.
But he has some kind of case. That's
This
he
is does have a case. He has a case.
lazy and he wants to. Is his case?
Good. No, you hear at the beginning. The beginning is I saw an easement and I walked on it. But where does he fail? He fails when she says, "Hey, this is not an easement. It's actually our property," and he says, "No, it's not." That's where I feel like his case falls apart. Nope.
Others have already walked on it, is what he's saying.
Right, exactly.
What he really is saying, others have walked on it. It's not that, no, it's not private property, but others have ruined it. I'm not the first.
I'm not the first. And then she says to him, yeah, you know who ruined it?
No, you're just the next. Yeah.
Exactly. Other people who broke the law. Shkoyach, right? Like, great that you broke the law also, right? And it's an interesting thing. What is he basing his answer on when you say he has a case? Because I think it's really a great point. What is he basing it on?
Well, that it's been trodden.
So what is he using? What facilities?
Precedent.
Precedent. Okay, good. What else?
Custom.
I want to say, I'm not asking the question, but I'm sorry. He's using his own eyes right? As opposed to what? Listening, asking. Once again, you see, this is Yeshua's problem. He's on the road and he's extremely confident, right? And he walks with purpose, but he doesn't know what he's talking about, right? And you see that because twice now he is rebuffed and he doesn't have a response. I want you to know that. That's what nitzchuni means, right? They bested me in that they told me off and I had nothing to say back. You're right. I have nothing to say back. Both the woman and the young girl say to him, yeah, you stole from me, right? Or you didn't ask for the correct custom and you stole from me, she's saying, right? You stole from us, lisim shekem otcha, which is a very strong, right? Lisim, it's a real word of, you're a highwayman, right? You're a robber, you're a bandit, what you're doing is theft. And I'm here to tell you and you still argue with me, right? It's like a crazy phenomenon. And he's vested, right? Now, a little boy, right? What was the incident with the little boy? I was once on a journey when I saw a little boy sitting in a cross, and I asked him, which is very good. Oh, Baruch Hashem. Yeshua ben Chanan learned how to ask a question. Great. Which way do I go? And then, what happens? He replied, well, this one is short, but this one is short but long, and long but short, right? And then what does he do? He chooses one, right? Now let me ask a question. This one's short. What would you say?
I would say, what do you mean by that?
Correct!
Yeah.
Good. Ask a follow-up question, okay? Like, it's good you asked question number one, but you didn't understand the answer, obviously, so ask a clarifying question. And it's a very interesting thing about having to ask questions. I don't know if anyone has this, but I totally relate to this, like, in so many ways, about what it means to ask. What does it mean to have to ask a question? What does it mean? You make yourself vulnerable. You admit you don't know something. You admit you're a stranger, and it's actually very difficult. Right? And the story is really showing us that Yeshua ben Chanan doesn't know. So I approached the town, I discovered it was hedged by gardens and orchards, by the way, which is fascinating. Right? That what is he blocked by?
The outer parts of this tikkun that we were talking about.
Beautiful. Very nice. He's blocked by the outsides of the city. Great. Love that. What else about them? They are? What does it mean that orchards and trees? So, pardes, yeah, it's interesting. There's a lot. I actually think there's an interesting pardes thing happening here, right? But right by these pardes, by these orchards,
Exactly
Probably private property.
He walked through before.
okay, great. Maybe it's but back to that same idea. Private property, right? Excellent point, right? Maybe he walks, right? He's stopped by private property this time. He learned his lesson, maybe, right? A growth. I think about that it's like a living border is also really interesting. He's stopped by growth, right? By vegetation. I find really fascinating, right? So he comes back and he's mad at him, right? I said, son, didn't you tell me that this road was short? He said, yeah, but didn't I also tell you? Long meaning you didn't bother to listen to the rest of my answer. You didn't, like you asked a question, but you didn't listen, what, right? I kissed him on his head and said, Ashreichem Yisrael, happy are you, Israel, all of you are great scholars from your great ones to your young, right? Migdolchem, Agtelchem, your great ones, which is whom? Me. Exactly. Yeah. Me, this little cute boy, right? Now, it's very fascinating. He doesn't say that about the two women, which I think is interesting to notice here, that he doesn't see them necessarily as what? Great scholars and a continuation of him, right? This little boy is going to be him one day, which he can take real pride in. He bested me, but at least he's going to be me, right? These women are not. And that I do think is very fascinating, and there's a lot to talk about here. Tons of gender stuff that needs to be unpacked in this piece. And by the way, all these pages, before this is the tons of gender conversation, and after this is the stories of Bruria, really fascinating, wonderful pieces to talk about in terms of gender. But there's something else going on here, even if we remove that element and just talk about outsiders, right? That Rabbi Yeshua ben Hananiah's instinct is to look at these outsiders and think, what? What's my relation to them? I know more. I know more. I know better. I trust myself. I trust my own eyes. I trust my own ears more than the person who is talking to me, right? And each one of those times, he actually ends up wrong, right? Also very fascinating to notice that we move from different levels of closeness to the city, which is also very fascinating. We go from an achsaniya, which is like an inside, to a field and a path to a crossroads, which presumably, so that's an interesting thing that there's a progression here, and I think we do see him try to start to grow, right? Certainly by the last story, what's interesting, by the way, is that the parallel story version of this in Eicha Rabbah actually has these stories in the opposite direction, and we end with the innkeeper woman, and that's actually compared to Yerushalayim, which is very fascinating, and that she's compared to Eicha Rabbah, very fascinating. And how does land and property and longing for a land come into this conversation? Also very interesting and important to look at. But, and I'm at my time, but I think, first of all, I love these stories, but I think there's something really interesting here about what it means to learn from those who are on the outskirts. What it means to be on the path and to be wary of asking questions, to have my haughtiness strengthened, to have my walls up, right? And that what Rabbi Shimon and Hananya learned was, actually, there's wisdom everywhere. And he walks back into his Beit Midrash and he says, guys, I really didn't understand this until now. I thought I was the king of the Beit Midrash, and then the minute that I leave the walls here, I actually don't know anything. I don't know how to be a person. I don't know how to take care of other people. I don't know how to walk down the street, he admits. I don't know how to get home. Right? I can't get home again. I don't know, right? So there's a very interesting sort of thing here wherein he is deeply humbled. Now I want to just add that the last piece, the closing, and there's a whole nother daf of Gemara that comes after this, but the closing thought of this whole sugya about being on the road and travel and chinuch and how it all fits together. Rabbi Yaffa source number 3, Bardosa said, what does it mean she is not in heaven or across the sea? If the Torah would be in the heavens or across the sea, we would be obligated to go there to pursue it. That's what it means, lo b'shamayim hi, right? Which, by the way, is also a very interesting reference back to, right? Tani rosh halachnai, lo b'shamayim hi. It's actually in our hands, right? So it's all, you can see all these things are percolating. But listen to this, right? Rava said, Torah is not found in one who is haughty about it like the heavens, nor one who is confident about it like the sea. And I think, and this is the concluding piece. Now, there's Gemara in between. But to me, that this is the last piece of this section is extremely important, right? That I think part of what the Gemara is trying to teach me here is we have to notice that when we draw boundaries, by definition, there are those we are leaving on the outskirts. And do I want to, right? And what do I think about those who are outside my Beit Midrash or outside my city, right? How do I see that, in fact, the Torah does not only live with me, but actually is everywhere? The Torah is on the road, the Torah is in the inn, the Torah is at the crossroads. The Torah is in those people who I normally overlook. No, says the Gemara. No, says Yeshua ben Hananya. Don't overlook those people. They are going to teach you things you can't learn in the places and spaces that you know and that you privilege. And with that, I'm going to end. Thank you guys so much. Great to learn with you. Thank you. If anybody